So my name is Laura Flores Cailloux. I have been one of the instructors for the Skagit program for the last 6 or 8 years, I think. I've been at Skagit Valley College for almost 25 years. Started as a faculty in the business department, and then I was appointed to a director position of business and community development. Did that for 4 years or so, and then was appointed again to become dean for the workforce programs, which is kind of like a principal job at the college level where you're supervising the faculty. So that job had 26 workforce programs, a few hundred faculty. Did that for about 10 years, and I did have to compete, so they appointed me, and then after 3 or 4 months, they wanted the faculty to have, to be able to weigh in on the actual permanent position, so they advertised, and I competed, and I did get hired in that process. So 10 years there, and then I competed again at Skagit Valley College to become the vice president for the Whidbey Island campus, and all of the San Juan Island and Anacortes centers, so that was 5 different locations outside of the Mount Vernon campus. I did that for 4 years, and then started teaching Latino leadership at Skagit Valley College on the weekends just as a volunteer deal, and realized that teaching was so much more fun than the administrative work that I'd been doing. So I asked the president, since I had started as a business faculty member, I had tenure, and tenure means that you have certain rights under the contract with the college. So part of my rights in the contract was always the ability to go back to teaching. So I didn't even have to ask, I just said, I want to teach again, and the college then needed to find a place for me to start teaching. So 4 years ago, I was teaching in basic skills and business, and also, but then was also added to my workload community leadership, so that included Latino leadership, a leadership program for Whidbey Island, and a leadership Skagit, which is a Skagit County community leadership program. Hi Rosario, so good to see you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So I feel like I have the best job ever. I do for work what I would do as a volunteer just because I care about these programs so much. Feel really lucky to be where I am. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about just leadership in general and multicultural leadership, and I just have to say, I know you guys already get it, what leadership is, because you wouldn't be here today, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't already have a really strong understanding of leadership. And I loved it when one of our cohort at Skagit Valley College, she said to me, I used to think leadership was, about having power in the community and only for certain people, and now I know leadership is just like seeing a need in the community and doing something about it. And that's what you guys are doing. I think that's where leadership starts. It's in those relationships, it's in those seeing the things that need to be done and just saying, what can I do to make something different for someone or something in the community. But I'm going to give you a little bit of the kind of the way in the academic world and business world, leadership is talked about. I must be, hang on. So before we even launch, I want you, do you have something to write on? Pen, paper? Yeah. So just write you a few thoughts on these 2 questions. A memory of a time when you felt fully included and you could be your full self, like there was nothing you had to hide or filter to be in that setting. And write down just what's that memory. And then also write down a memory of a time when you really felt like this is not a place for me. I really don't belong here. And we'll be going back to these 2 scenarios for you to touch base with later on, but I just want you to kind of get those in your mind and a few notes jotted down for now. So I'm just going to breeze through a couple of things to think about when we think about what is a leader, how has that been thought about, and kind of the traditional way of thinking about leaders is that, you know, there used to be a saying like leaders are born, not made, that it's someone who's super charismatic, someone who tells people what to do, who has the answers, is an expert. That's kind of old school thinking about leadership. Some of the current models, when we think about leadership, are thinking about like, what is it that leaders do? What are their behaviors? There's been lots of research about that. There's also this idea of servant leadership. How do you lead in a way that's in service to the people who work for you or the organization's mission? Adaptive leadership and multicultural leadership for a multicultural world. So charismatic leaders who just by their charm, their energy, like just pull you in. This is one of the traditional ways of thinking that you had to have this in order to be a leader. Autocratic or authoritarian leaders who decide and tell people what they should do. And the focus in this is on individual success and achievement, right? It's not about the success of the group. And so I want to propose that we're not talking about either of those things when we're talking about leadership now, right? So, behavioral leadership, the research that's been done about what are the things that leaders do that make them more effective, make their organizations more effective. And this is one set of researchers, Cousys and Posner, who focused on these, who found these 5 different behaviors were prevalent for leaders who really led effective organizations, that they modeled the way, they walked their talk. They were able to talk about a vision for the future that inspired other people. They were willing to say, challenge the process, to say, no, that's not working, let's do something different. They encouraged and enabled others to act. And they encouraged the heart. They recognized when people did good work and helped them see the connection of that work to the broader vision. Servant leadership, leadership in service to the people who work for you or the organization. And in that model of leadership, instead of the leader being on the top, kind of telling everybody what to do, this model flipped it upside down and said, what if the leader is really working for everybody else in the organization? What would that look like? Adaptive leadership, I won't spend a lot of time on, but it's that idea that we're leading in times where no one knows the answers. Problems are complex. We're faced with things that there are no, automatic turnkey solutions. So what do leaders do when they're facing these situations where they can't tell people, do this, do this, do this, do this? And so this adaptive leadership is really about how do you pull people together, tap into broader sets of knowledge, collaborate, and slowly kind of make changes to see what works, to experiment, fail, try again, and see how you can get to the place where you're making the kind of improvements you want. So we're talking about leadership that's much more flexible, much more open, much less top-down, and more communicating and tapping into everybody's expertise. Multicultural leadership, The definition I have here is an inclusive approach and philosophy that incorporates the influences, practices, and values of diverse cultures in a respectful and productive manner. And again, this is really important when you have multicultural work environments, global companies, and these environments are more complex. And there is a kind of, in the Western world, a natural tendency to kind of have this old model, preferred model of what leadership looks like, this very confident, I'm going to tell you what to do kind of model of leadership. And so multicultural leadership is another place where we push back and say, you know, no, not for these days. That's no longer an appropriate way to think about what leadership should look like. And we know that's important because our demographics are changing dramatically. This is just from the 2020 census showing the growth in population by race in the United States. And you could see the Latino or Hispanic bar there has the largest growth over the 2010 to 2020 time period. Nobody else is even close. And then there's other races identified, and then for the white population, an actual decline in the numbers of people. So we see this rapidly changing demographics that are going to impact workplaces that mean you have to have multicultural leadership skills. It is amazing. And this is the same chart, but it's just looking at the 18 and under population. So we're a very young population. This is where the change is happening. Okay. So I'd just like you to turn to someone next to you and talk about who models leadership for you. And think about leadership broadly. This is leadership of caring for one another, caring for community, actually engaging in action and behaviors that change things for the community. So I just want to give you a minute to turn to somebody next to you and say, who models that for you? So who are some of the people you identified? Were they people in the community? Yeah. Thanks, Sandra. I agree. You've got some great people here modeling the way. What about at this table? Anyone come to mind that you want to share with the group?
Like one of my managers at work. So I feel like managers, I don't know, you can get lucky with good ones. I have 3 total, but like this specific one, her name's Bree. She's actually from Mount Vernon, so she's from there. And yeah, I just feel like she actually cares about us. Not just like, oh, I'm a manager, I'm gonna do my job. She actually cares about us. Yeah. She's a great leader, yeah. And not just like word-wise, just like life that makes you too. So, yeah.
Thank you. What about over here? Does anyone want to share a leader you thought about and talked about?
So I thought of my mom. She's very bold, either like bold as in a family matter, but also she reached out to the community to help us kind of get the sense of giving to the community. So she is really like an example for my siblings and I.
Thank you so much for sharing those examples. And I'd love to hear more about it. I'm going to keep moving just to get a little more information in front of you here. do that again. So I'm relying on some work by a woman named Juana Bordas, who has written about multicultural leadership. And some of the things she emphasizes, and I can give this slideshow to your advisors too, so you don't have to worry about trying to write things down. But she talks about, we have to learn from our past. And I think this is something we see in the Latino community a lot, hearing the stories of our families. They're telling us how our relatives used to do things, and they convey kind of a value set through that. A sense of moving from worrying about me, my success, to a focus on worrying about the community's success, being generous with each other, our time, our resources, treating each other as equals. I'm not a leader and a bunch of people that I get to tell what to do, but that we all have something to contribute. That also, if we're taking care of our community, it means we have to use our voice, we have to engage in activism, we have to work for the common good, we have to engage all generations in that work, and we have to embrace our communities as relations. And so she has a model where she talks about hierarchical pluralism, kind of a big term, but just kind of saying the way leadership is talked about now, where it's very, I'm on top and I'm going to keep a certain part of the population down so that I can stay on top. As our demographic is increasing, I think it's really important not to repeat the mistakes of past cultures in terms of how they treat people. So how do we move into leadership and thinking about it in a different way, in a totally different way. And also being grateful and having hope. So you had an idea about a time when you felt included. We started this little segment with that. What I want you to think about is, at that time when you felt really included, what were the feelings of being included, right? Did it feel loving, warm? What were the feelings in it? And then how did that enable you to act when you were in that environment where you felt included? What were the actions? So again, just take a minute and write down, when you felt included, how did you feel, and how did that allow you to act? Okay, and then we'll turn to your table again and just talk about how that's different for you. When you think about those spaces where you're included, what are the feelings? What are the actions? When you're in a space you're not included, what are the feelings? How does that make you act? All right, we're going to just report back from our tables. So, what's your name?
When I felt included, I felt at peace with my surroundings, and I felt like I was able to love and be loved. When I felt excluded, I kind of felt more serious and rigid, and I didn't want to be there. So yeah.
Thank you. How about at this table? Someone want to report back? You do Spanish or English?
Well, when I feel included, I feel so good, but you feel more energy. But when you don't feel, you feel didn't belong, maybe you feel you doubt about you, and you feel like a child. Yeah.
All right.
When I feel included, I feel trusted and pleased about it. And when I don't feel included, I feel disappointed or sad or upset.
Thanks for that that reflection. I think, you know, if we as leaders want everyone around us to be able to be their full selves, bring all of their talents, all of their ideas, then we have to be paying attention to how do we create these environments and these spaces where everybody feels like, yes, I can have a voice here. I can say something really silly, and this group will still love me, but because I'm still kind of thinking it through, I don't have any answers yet, but it sparks that kind of creativity and willingness to take risks and willingness to share more of who you are. It's fantastic. Okay, so think about those settings that you imagined at the beginning. What was it about the setting that made you either feel included or excluded? And then I want you to think and talk about what is an action you could take as an individual in that setting to try to make it different. And then think about what can be done systemically or by the organization to make it feel like a safer, more inclusive space. So I think the individual action, that's clear. When I talk about systemically, what can be done systemically, there I mean like what are things that could be a policy of the organization, or what could be a practice that the teacher or the boss does that they always do that makes it a different kind of environment. So you're going from you kind of individually, maybe something you could say or do, to also thinking about, you know, what could the organization be doing? Okay, so a conversation about that, and then we'll report out. All right, I'm going to have you report back out now. An individual and a systemic example. If you can only think of an individual, that's fine too. So.
Hi, my name is Janira, and we are discussing about the individual change that we could apply for doing the things more inclusive. And we are talking about pointing out the good things that everyone can have pointing out the good things that to make the person feel valued and a good team member.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Here.
So for the first one, what is it about the environment that made you uncomfortable? Not being or feeling supported. What could you do as an individual to make this environment more comfortable for everyone? Help advocate for students' needs. And what could be done institutionally or systemically to make this environment more comfortable for everyone? I think that perhaps the institution could focus on providing more in-house resources for students.
Yeah, that's a good example of the systemic or an institutional response. They're actually, you know, hiring people who can be provide support services. So that's, you know, a budget, a person. That's something that goes beyond what a single individual can do. Great example.
I was kind of gonna go off what Cynthia said. I tend to feel uncomfortable in environments where I see people that don't look like me. So I think that systematically or like, you know, institutionally, like you should hire people that look and represent your students. So having a more diverse like faculty would be very, you know, it would be like inspiring, you know, to see people up there, you know.
Yeah, perfect example. Thank you. And down here.
Somebody younger than me is going to walk back to my car.
Is there somebody you'd like to?
Good morning, my name is Allison. So for the first question, I would say it's very similar to the last person. I think that whenever I'm surrounded people that, like you said, don't look like me or like I don't relate to them as much, I get to feel like a little bit more shy. But as an individual, I think something that I would done that I didn't do before would just be, you know, understand that my voice is important and my input is also important, and I just have to be confident about it and speak out.
That's right. I think that something, I didn't introduce myself in terms of my background. My dad is Cailloux, a Native American from California. My mother's Mexican American, and in the Native communities, you know, we think about raising children, we're looking for their gifts, right? Everyone has a gift, something that the community can benefit from. It's up to the community to find that gift. And so I think you should hold on to that idea. There's a reason, you know, there's a reason that we're here. We have a gift that we need to discover and share with the community around us, and that will benefit the community around us. So never forget the power of that you bring, the gifts that you bring, the need for the world to hear your voice, whatever setting you're in, whether you're feeling included or not. And maybe sometimes when you're not feeling included, that's the most important time to use your voice and bring in a different perspective. I do have a handout from Juana Bordas, the book that I had in the slideshow, where she compares kind of the current paradigm of how leadership is thought about, and then some ideas about how it could be different. So I'll pass that out, and I'll share my slideshow with you. The remainder of the slideshow just talks about some of the impacts of multicultural leadership and a multicultural workforce. Has a bunch of statistics about how businesses outperform. The more diverse they are, both in gender and ethnicity, the better performance they get. So just some reasons beyond kind of the moral reason of wanting to, you know, be in a relationship to one another. It also has a real significant economic impact. I appreciate the time with you this morning, and I appreciate you just doing what you're doing and being here today.